So now, Brooklyn, New York is in the house. DJ right now. Yeah. So he's the inventor of the famous turntablism transcription methodology. It's a unique calculus-based notation system for electronic music and DJing. At ScratchCon 2000, Qbert awarded him with the DJ Qbert Legendary Scholarship for his pioneering work, and he's a true ambassador of Scratch science. We are looking forward to present his lecture on ancient of turntablism at this year's Sample Music Festival. Give it up for DJ Ray Down, please.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here in Berlin again. I was here a couple of years ago giving a lecture at the Urban Spree Gallery on a similar thing I'm about to talk about tonight. And tonight we're going to talk about my system of notation and turntablism in general and music notation as it relates to what happened in ancient history, which most of us weren't ever taught. So, I was raised in the Western school system, and in that Western school system, a lot of things in history were left out. And the cool thing is now we're coming into an era of, can you turn my volume up a little bit? Can you turn it up a little bit? A little bit more? A little bit more? Yeah, great. So yeah, now we're coming into an era of information connections where everybody can, connect to each other, whether it's Wikipedia or YouTube, and we can find a lot of the information that we missed, because when I was raised, as far as music notation, I was taught that there's only one type of music notation. I was taught that the only type of music notation was basically, classical, Western, European music that came out of the monastic monk, tradition of, like the Catholic Church and things like that. But in my research, I found that that was totally wrong. That's totally not the case. And so first, we're gonna go back to Egypt, because a lot of, everything usually starts with Europe, but, in my research, I found that the oldest known real music notation is really based in the Egyptian notation over here in the upper left-hand corner, and you can see that it's actually a really advanced form of notation. It's totally crazy. When I saw this, it totally blew my mind. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. And a woman named Teresa Sauer, she released a book called Notations 21, honoring John Cage's earlier notations book. But and she released that book. And if you try to buy that book now, it might be like $2,000. Every time I give a lecture and I talk about this book, the price increases like, $1,000 every time. And so yeah, in this book, she released this document that's an actual Egyptian music notation document, and you can see that the Egyptians, they were using circular nodes to represent sequencing, kind of like Fruity Loops. And then if you have like an interval or a chord, you see there's three circles, together, and then you can even see that somebody actually buffed over the words at the top, and they wrote Greek over it. If you look in the upper corner, you can see there's Greek written over the original, whatever they had written in Egyptian. And and they were using volume as actual volume, which was really interesting as far as geometry is concerned. The size of the node represented the actual intensity of the volume, while the colors actually represented different notes. And you can see they have the scale all the way on the side, all the way here on the left. This scale right here, you can see that it's an actual, 12 half steps, and each one has its own different color. And, and that's an actual piece right there. And that just blew my mind when I saw that. So all these other examples on the screen are just to show, how, we have this modern technology, but there's a lot of ancient things that were happening that, that relate to that. And, some people even say that, a lot of it's kind of conspiracy theory, but some people say that, the Egyptians were able to use sound to do even other things like levitate, objects and things like that, which we're able to do now. More recently, we've just been able to levitate objects using just sound. But some people say they were able to use that a long time ago and actually, move the bricks and stuff like that to build pyramids. And so, and then also here in the lower right-hand corner, we have, this is an Egyptian calendar kind of, and you see that it looks like turntables, right? It looks just like a bunch of turntables, and Egyptian geometry was really extensive and intense. And so now we're going to go to the next frame. And what's also important is that if you can see in the upper right-hand corner, that's the original Library of Alexandria that was burned, by Alexander, and that's just showing that the Western conquest of Western notations or information or anything. All these things were destroyed and hidden and locked away. And so you might have the Smithsonian or a lot of different institutions in their basements, kind of like in Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark. There's a lot of stuff that we still never even seen. Somebody might pull out a file one day, it'll blow our minds and find that people were doing stuff that we're doing right now. So on to the next. And then I found in my research in Tibet, but this was before the monastic Catholic tradition, they were using actual waves. And if you look right here, you can see these are actual waves. And in their Tibetan chants, they were just using waves to represent the rise and fall of pitch over time. And my system of notation, TTM, the turntablist transcription methodology that I invented in 1999, is basically graphing the movement of the record over time. Very, very simple. And then anytime you have a click of the crossfader, it's a black dot. Or if you're trying to separate scratches, you're using open fader symbols. But all this stuff actually predated this wave notation right here. Predated the European notation. And then what really blew my mind in my research was that if you look right here at the lower left-hand corner, the early European notation actually was more influenced by the actual Tibetan notation. This is the early neumes. They call them neumes before, they call them classical notes or whatever. And these neumes, they look just like a lot like TTM. Like, it blew my mind when I saw it. I was like, wow, this is, it looks like some scratches, like some military scratches. Looks like, a stab. Like this right here looks like a stab. This, and I'll do a stab. Right? It looks like a stab, and then like lower down, it looks like some, slices and different types of scratches. So as it evolved, it went from these waves into these these more square-like nodes, and then it went into this and this, and then what we have today. And now what we have today just totally stagnated since modern times, and that's what's really amazing. It's great that people like Alex Sonneville is using S notation to further expand the vocabulary and take the classical music to a whole new level, because I think a lot of times within teaching, what happens is they feel like, hey, what worked for us is going to work for you. But, information and everything is always evolving. And then what ended up happening is that people started using the waves over the letters, and this was early Latin, vocal notation. And it's also very simple, similar to the Russian notations and the area, like the region, the Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Lower Eastern Europe. And the cool thing about this is that you can see that these notations, they're actually doing more complex stuff than a lot of times than you might see a hymn book, right now at these times. And right here in the lower corner, this is some more, the Tibetan notation. And then this is here, let's see, it's like that. That's me transcribing, a score. And a Portishead score, actually. And by, Portishead. So let me see. So the next one, we're going to go to the next. And this is the same thing, where we can see that over time, all these early symbols were called diacritics. We call them diacritics in music notation. And diacritics are just things that can enhance the sound. So like, you know, you have umlaut and, you know, different symbols with dots and things and slashes and other, each language has its own set of diacritics to help express that thing more easily. So, you know, you might, especially languages like Arabic and, you know, a lot of European languages use a lot of, you know, dots and slashes and things over the letters. Because what's important to note is that language is the first music notation, because when you see a character and you want to, you know, vocalize that character, you're actually reciting music in a sense. So, you know, I'm not going to really focus on characters and vocal notation, I mean, as far as just words and writing, but you can see the influence that they both have on each other. All right, and yeah, right here are the Byzantine symbols right here. And in Byzantine music, they still use these symbols. And a lot of this looks, you know, a lot like this is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels I transcribed by DJ Premier, him scratching over J-Moo's track. And it's, you know, it's like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. But yeah, so, and you can see here's some writing in Latin, and it's got the diacritics over it. And, you know, it looks really advanced. It's you know, I never saw anything like this in school. When I had my music class, they're just like, hey, this is what it is. You know, this is what a 16th note looks like. They never told me the history of actual music notation. And that's why I'm bringing it here to you all today. So we're going to just cover music notations that are pre-20th century, before the 20th century. Because once the 20th century hit, there's so many amazing music notation styles that came out. And this is a recent find, and you'll see a lot of blogs will talk about this. They'll be like, hey, we just found this new thing. It's 900, it's around the year 900. It's the oldest music notation. But it's not, because the Egyptian notation predates that. And, you know, so that even shows that all these blogs are even, you know, promoting the Eurocentric idea that only Europeans were able to invent, you know, music notation. But this is an amazing find, because this is really old, and this even looks, you know, it looks a lot like TTM, it looks a lot like what Alex is doing. The S notation is really amazing that this finds. This is from the year 900. Next, now we're going to talk about just circular notation in general. In my research, I found that ancient cultures in ancient times, you know, they were using astrology and geometry, and everything was overlapped with their religion and all those things. Calendars and timekeeping devices were some of the first, you know, references of cycles and loops, and using a circular loop. So right here on the left, we have a you know, a calendar with different guys around on the calendar. But this is an actual calendar that's, you know, influenced our 12-month calendar. It was actually, you know, a 12-sided calendar, and you know, and this is the new Library of Alexandria that kind of resembles that, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, so, and right here at the bottom, this is a game, a West African game called Mancala, and, you know, it's you know, it's kind of a sequencing type of a thing. It looks like a sequencer from far away, but, you know, it's just a game using, you know, beads or you know, different types of things. Great, yeah, the volume is great. Yeah, so next we'll move on. So then in my research I found this right here really blew my mind. This is a Yoruba Nigerian digital witch notation. This was the witches and warlocks of Nigeria use this notational system. This, you know, looks a lot like, you know, looks like chromosomes. It looks like, you know, looks like a lot of digital things. The early punch cards, you know, that we were using in the 70s and 60s and early 80s probably, and that really blew my mind, seeing all that stuff. Right here at the upper right-hand corner is that same system. This is the Yoruba digital notation. And what's interesting about Yoruba is that there's 500 words in Yoruba that are exactly the same as ancient Egyptian. So as of today, Yoruba is the closest related language to ancient Egyptian. So a lot of the high priests, when Egypt fell, a lot of them went to West Africa and went to Nigeria specifically. And now they're one of the richest nations. So, in Africa. So now we're going to go to this bottom corner. This is a drum notation, a circular drum notation that is used in used in West Africa. And we can see here that what they have is they'll have a drummer, they'll have a drum circle, and then they'll have people do certain rhythms, and those people, and maybe another drummer will do. There'll be a master rhythm, and then there's slave rhythms, a lot like MIDI, and the drummers will control each other, and they're doing like they have ciphers where they're doing circular patterns, but then somebody else has to do the other person's pattern, or the master drummer can control other people's patterns. So that's what all these like converging circles are. And that's also the Egyptian flower of life. If you look right here in all the way to the left, that's a picture of like a flower of life. You might see a lot of tattoos like that. This is a Dogon symbol at the center of the screen. And that's, in Mali, the Dogon tribe. And they're known for their, use of astrology and they're able to see a lot of things that they're just finding now, and modern science doesn't know really how they figured out a lot of those things. But this is some of their notations, and you can see it looks a lot like some TTM stuff. Above right here, this is also their Dogon notations that a person who went and studied with them, they're reciting what the Dogons were doing. And this is Mansa Musa, one of the richest men in history, or people say he was the richest man in history, and I was just putting that there to show, the splendor of the time, and then, all the lines and all that stuff, the angles and everything. So mathematics has always been a part of, ancient human forms of communication. Now, this right here, this whole section right there, we see a lot of symbols that these are the iconographic system. And this is also an African system. They have their own stock market where they're actually using, symbols to say like, oh, the rise and fall of gold or whatever type of commodities that they were locally trading in their markets and whatnot. So that just really blew my mind when I saw that. Like, you just assume like, hey, stock market, all that stuff is a new thing, but they've been who knows how long they've been doing this. But people just there's a lot of old writings. These are some. This is like Congolese script. It just looks looks so amazing. Like it's just all based on. It looks kind of like Arabic, but it's a lot different. It looks it's just all based on waves. And on the note of waves, the main thing that distinguishes my system, TTM, versus the standard Western style of notation is that it's kind of similar to quantum mechanics, where you have particles and you have waves. I'm using waves to represent music, whereas classic notation is just using a sound. I'm using a particle like just a symbolic notation to represent a sound. So you see a symbol, and that symbol is representing a eighth note. But the thing is that there can be limitations to that. But both things can work better for certain instruments. Like I personally believe, like Anthony Braxton, an experimental jazz saxophonist who won the MacArthur grant. He once said that every instrument should have its own notation. Like trombones should have their own notation. If you're doing slides, and why are they using the exact same notation as a as a piano or as a trumpet? Like there should be trumpet notations that are based on having just three buttons or whatever. So we're just at the forefront of all that. It's just great to see so many different types of notations out there. Let's see. Now we're going to go to the next. And this is more Dogon mathematics right here. This was what I was talking about before. The Dogons were able to prove the existence of the star Sirius, of one of the hidden stars. And even before scientists were able to, do that recently, like they just recently found it. And these are some other West African systems. And this is just to show you too, like you see right here, the Hebrew, the Star of David is also ancient thing that parallels with a lot of cultures. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Right here we see this is a circular system once again. And that kind of led me to when I created what I call a BPM protractor. And what this is right here, if any of y'all want to come up later and check this out, I created this so that you can find the BPM of a record without using a BPM counter, just by measuring the distance between one beat. So if like, one beat is 20 degrees, that's going to be 100 beats per minute. And that's what, like DJ Swamp, when he first started releasing the no-skip technology, or some people call it skipless, skip-proof, and then Dirt Style came in and just and totally refined it, and now we've got so many amazing labels like Cut and Paste and whatnot that are making skip-proof records. And so I'll play a skip-proof record for people who don't know what I'm talking about. This is the Sequel and Y record, and when I bought this years ago, I was just totally blew my mind. And with skip-proof records, if you move the needle, it'll still stay on beat. So I'll show you an example of that for people that aren't familiar. All right, so it's always going to stay on beat. No matter where you put the needle, it's always going to stay on beat because it's designed mathematically. This one in particular is at 100 beats per minute. And that's designed so that it's always going to just keep looping like that. And it's never going to go off beat. All right, so now we're going to go to the next. And we're going to move a little bit faster. Now, back to the ancient Hebrew stuff right here. These are some Hebrew characters. Each character in Hebrew, represents a number as well as a vocal sound. And what's interesting, too, about that is that, so you see a connection with mathematics. The movie Pi kind of, I recommend everybody sees that. That movie kind of touches on that. And we see right here, there's a bunch of notational systems that look a lot like TTM. Like this looks like an upside down, baby scratch or something right there. This looks like, it looks a lot like TTM. That's why I have some, images of TTM and stuff right here. And what's also interesting is that, just to see the cross-pollination of cultures. There's actually a number of Japanese and Hebrew connections as far as characters. These are characters that are the same in Japanese as they are in Hebrew. Not a lot, but there's a number. And then, Japanese is an amalgamated language that has a lot of, they're always bringing in new vocabulary, but they've been doing that for a very long time. And this kind of relates to the idea of isolationism versus diffusionism. And what we were taught in school is isolationism, that in ancient times, everybody was in these separate little tribes and they weren't communicating with each other. And, and now we're all together and people are communicating. But that's the isolationist theory. But diffusionism is the idea that, hey, people are always, communicating with each other. And, one person could walk from here to, South Africa, or they could walk to, China from here, or, take a raft, and walk. So, but from all these ancient, writings, we see that obviously people were interacting with each other. These are some Mende scripts. A lot of the Z tribe from the ancient Black Chinese Z tribe from China had a lot of connections with the Olmecs. They came from archaeologists are finding that they were coming from Asia, coming into the Americas, and these are some Mende scripts from West Africa. And a lot of some Mende, there was some Mende overlap with ancient American Olmec culture, so they were going back and forth. And then this really blew my mind too, when I found out that there was a whole other type of notational system by the Tamil culture in Sri Lanka. We have artists like MIA that are, she's from Sri Lanka, and this notation system right here. It looks like kind of like Egyptian cartouches turned to the side. This was actually their music notation system. This right here is also a system from Mongolia. There's a whole other type of music notation system, and that blew my mind. I was like, there's so many systems. How come they just, even if you go to colleges, most advanced college programs, they're not showing you the Mongolian music notation, the Tibet music notation, Tamil music notation, but through the internet you can find it all. So this is like maybe 5 years of research. Right here, this is just general Sumerian, the first writing we know of human, history of the first writings of their symbols of cuneiform, that led to all of our forms of writings that we use today, like this right here. This is actually a music score from Sumeria from way back. And this right here is another West African. It's not a music system, but this is actually just a writing system. It just looks really out there. Looks kind of like some TTM stuff or some music notations. And here we go. Now we're into we're back to the Tibetan notations right here. There's some more examples, and these are some more of the diacritics that are. You see how these each of these things have different slants. You see that in this Mongolian. They're saying that's either from the 19th century, from either Mongolia or Tibet. We can see that they're using really advanced slants. And here are diacritics in Arabic as well, where you see different symbols above that in a lot of the more complex books. And these are some more diacritics up here. These are like, you see is some Russian written up there. These are Byzantine symbols. So in the Byzantine era, they're doing a lot of that. And this is from Sumeria as well. This was me transcribing the Diggable Planets Ninth Wonder song, but just look kind of similar. So that's why I put those parallels in there. And I'm going to move fast. And this is some more of the Byzantine diacritics being used. And you see all these slashes. Now this is a cool system called Scratch Graphique, and that's from France. This is a scratch notation system that came after TTM, and it's really cool because it looks a lot like a lot of the Russian stuff. And let me give that DJ the credit. What his name is? His name is Bert. It's from Bert. He created that. And yeah, we'll move on to the next. In Indian notations, with tabla notations, they have a whole complex system of notating the tabla music and the vocal inflections, which is kind of like scratching too, with a lot of the and beatboxing and the overlapping of basically scatting. Because I was just explaining to a friend last night that a lot of turntablism is kind of like scatting. So now we're going to move really fast. We got a couple minutes left. And yeah, we see Japanese systems right here. These are cool systems, but this is just more structural. More character-based. Just showing characters. And here's an actual circular disc from Crete that actually has symbols, characters, kind of spiraling around a lot like a vinyl. And that was kind of interesting. And this right here looks like a drum machine. And if you want to find all the names and the dates, you can go to the website, ttmacademy.org. And this is another Sumerian tablet, and that just kind of blew my mind. To see these circular discs and all these things that look like a lot of different modern technologies. This is one of the oldest instruments found from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. And yeah, these are just some more systems from the past couple hundred, 500 years. And let's keep moving forward. We have the old hymn scripts, the ancient old hymn scripts from Ireland. This was the original. This is a rendering of the Yorkshire woman, who's the oldest woman of the UK. But they won't teach this in school because some people are teaching it. If you look up, and there's been an uproar because due to imperialism and colonialism, they don't want to teach that the first woman from the UK was black. And this was an actual rendering that the Yorkshire Museum did. And there's more of the digital notation, but this was all pre-Celtic. The Igbo and the Ogham, so the Ogham scripts are the early, the Irish stuff, or the stuff from that area, but it relates exactly to a lot of the Igbo scripts that were West African scripts that were before that. And we'll fly through these. These are just maps and star charts, different cultures, the Asian star charts, the I Ching, and also constellations. Us being able to see the difference between constellations. These constellations look a lot like scratch notation, as you can see over to the left, the Great Dipper, that Asian star chart. And we keep moving on. And up in the upper left-hand corner is the Navajo weather notation system. They would write down the weathers, and they would do rain dances, and they'd have symbols, kind of like our modern meteorology, symbols you see on your phone, where it's a rainy day, a sunny day. They were doing all those things, and and that was somebody that wrote it down in the 1900s. And then at the bottom left-hand corner is Adam's calendar from South Africa, which is really, really old. I can't even remember the dates in that, but that's super old. This is just more, geometric of things that are going on. And we see pyramids and shapes. At the upper left-hand corner is a Quaker, an old American Quaker music notation of European immigrants, religious immigrants that came to the U.S. And here we see this was different cultures' view of like parallel dimensions, and the Egyptian view versus some European views, and parallel dimensions kind of relates to the idea of tracks that are existing on their own, but like the no skip record, that are parallel to each other, but they're existing and they're not really affecting each other. Whereas a general song is something that's one thing that's strung together. All right, and these are just examples. Right here is a Roman. Actually, it's an ancient Latin Roman. It looks like a mixer. It looks just like a mixer, but it's an abacus. It's an ancient Roman abacus. Abacuses have been used throughout history. This was the instrument they found in South America. They don't even know what it was for. They still haven't figured it out, or maybe they do know. They're just not telling us. And so yeah, this is timekeeping devices, ancient timekeeping devices. With all of our equipment now, we're always dealing with timekeeping. These are water clocks, and these are just different types of clocks, ancient and systems of counting and numeration. As you can see, Mayan versus Chinese, all these different ones. Now this was like the first sketch that I did of the vortex. Before I created this, these were the first sketches of just creating, starting with a circle and then expanding into different higher dimensions for like triangle, 3-sided, a square is 4-sided, pentagram, 5-sided, hexagon, 6-sided. Like just that's what that chart is doing right there, the geometry vortex, and then just paralleling that with the Mayan calendar and their systems of really, really complex systems of mechanics and notation. This is a German, one of the famous German artists, Albert Dürer, and these are his designs, his notations, and all these things are amazing. And what's also interesting about Albert Dürer, that I especially want to say here in Germany, is that his family came from Eastern Europe, and they actually had to buy a Moorish, a black European, seal. And they bought the last name Dürer. They had like Eastern European last name, and Albert Dürer actually, his father actually changed the name to a black German name. But when Queen Isabella expelled all the non-whites in 1492, all that history was erased, and most people don't realize that there were heterogeneous populations, meaning people of all different races living here in Europe before modern times. It wasn't just like, oh, people just started immigrating here. There were always Asian and African people here in Europe. Okay, so yeah, so in closing, these are just more charts, more crazy designs. We have dance notation from the 1700s, the overlap of French and Haitian culture and the African traditions of writing in the ground, and you can see like they were actually writing music notations, on the ground and making books like that. That book up in the left-hand corner is actually the breakdown. The whole breakdown was actually a slave dance that was just called the breakdown from the 1800s, and now we use that term in turntablism and all that stuff. So dance notations, fencing notations, that's Da Vinci, color notations, and this is Jan Mitzer, and look, you can see this kind of parallels to if you see a needle close up, it looks a lot like his designs, like all his designs. He already made all the designs that we're just getting into now, like even with Buckmaster Fuller and all these things, kind of all that to Jan Mitzer. This is, the last thing I have to say is animation and vinyl, being able to, we can use vinyl to actually animate as well. And as we see here, these are kind of the histories of animation and zoetropes and things like that. Camera obscura, we're using cameras right now. The turntablists are using everything, especially turntablists like myself that are focused on straight to YouTube turntablists, and I'm not worried about clubs. And then this is the last thing I have to say. Is upper left-hand corner is that is the first book called the Book of Optics. That was the first book on angles and things like that. And that was a Islamic writer, and all that's kind of been suppressed. And lastly, we've got holograms, MIA hologram, Tupac hologram, but they were using holograms before the 20th century. And even the French government right here was using holograms with their military to try to scare people. Like that's a big hand in the darkness, and They're trying to use holograms to scare people, and that's it. And all this, you can get through, and I'm releasing this all in a book called Pre-20th Century Arts and Sciences. So it's kind of a look at all arts and sciences as it relates to turntablism.
So, that was the fastest lecture because the guest speaker. Sorry for that, because of the delay we have to hurry a little bit. So thank you very much. Way down, New York's in the house, and give it up, yeah?
Right. Thanks so much.
So, and next we have